is on faith matters, but always a pleasure to welcome them both. Assalamu alaikum, gentlemen, and welcome to Faith Matters. To my immediate right is, of course, the renowned and respected Mujibur Rahman Sahib, who is a senior advocate of the Pakistan Supreme Court, a man we have great affection for and always welcome from Pakistan. It's a pleasure to have you here with us again today, sir. To his right is a very familiar face here in the UK and on Faith Matters, and it's a great pleasure to once again welcome Dr. Zaid Khan Sahib, who is the president of the Qaza Board here in the UK. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. We're going to travel to the US, to the good old south of the USA. I won't attempt the accent. It's a lady called Sarah from the United States who's written in. Thank you very much, Sarah, for your question. There's a variety of questions she's asked, and we'll take, if you don't mind, Sarah, just a couple of your questions for today's program, and we will come back to one of your others at a later time. The first question Sarah asks, excuse me, it's always dry throats, can always be a problem. Is the question of the prophets which we find mentioned in the Holy Quran, indeed not mentioned. And Sarah asks this, that there seems to be a pattern that most prophets have preached in the Middle East or through South Asia. Their teachings have been diffused to some parts of Africa and so forth. But is there a reason for this exclusivity? And then she asks, why hasn't there been a significant prophet in China or Russia or amongst Native Americans in North America, so on and so forth, oceanic islands, for example, Australasia? And she then asks, is it because Arabia and the surrounding lands were so immoral that these were the areas which needed the most work to be done, and subsequently the most miraculous changes that needed to be made? Mujib Sahib, if I could come with you, the premise of the question is that we find often prophets mentioned, indeed within all religious scriptures we find them, but is there a sort of skewing or a bias towards them arriving in Arabia?
Well, the lady has presumed that there were no prophets in other continents or in other areas. This is not correct. The Holy Quran makes a general statement that there have been no people amongst whom we did not raise a warner. So prophets have been raised in all nations, in all places, at all times during the periods of history. All of them have not been enumerated or counted down in the Holy Quran. Only few of them have been counted down. And we usually read some names which are prophets which were raised in the Arabian Peninsula or in the Middle Eastern area. There may be a reason for this, but for the timing, let me say that prophets were raised in other countries, in other continents also. Confucius was a prophet raised in China. Zoroaster was a prophet raised in Iran. Buddha was a prophet raised in India. Some commentators of Holy Quran, they say that the name Zul-Kifl, there is one prophet named in Quran as Zul-Kifl. Some people say Zul-Kifl means Buddha, because he was born in Kapil Vastu, and Zul-Kifl means that of the Kifl, which is a Arabicized form of Kipl. So some people think Zul-Kifl was Buddha. So Buddha was born in India. Ramchandra was born in India. He was a prophet according to our estimation. Krishna was a prophet according to our estimation. Because the history is so old that their teachings have been forgotten, or they have been mutilated, or they have assumed different shapes. Sometimes the figurative expressions have been given the literal meaning, and therefore the teachings seem to have disappeared. Similarly, there are prophets, may have been prophets in the Aborigines, Australian Aborigines or American Aborigines. Why prophets were not raised in America? Well, America was discovered much later. The prophets were raised among where the human population was developing. So the growth of civilization and the human population, with the passage of history, wherever the human beings were there, prophets were raised. The human population scattered all over, and then at certain places again prophets were raised. So we cannot say that there is an area where prophet was not raised. Prophets were raised, we may or may not know their names, because there is a vision of Hazrat Ibn al-Arabi Ibn al-Arabi saw in a vision that he was circuiting the Kaaba, and he met a prophet, and he said, or something like that, that he wanted to know of Hazrat Adam, the Adam. And he said, which Adam are you talking about? There have been 43,000 Adams in this world, which means the cycles of human civilizations have come and gone. So we do not know their names, but the Quranic teaching is that there were prophets amongst every people, every nation. Sometimes two prophets were raised simultaneously at the same time for two different areas. We find some mention in the Quran. Hazrat Lut and Hazrat Ibrahim were perhaps in the same period in the different areas. So that we cannot say that prophets were not raised and that there is a question of exclusivity. There is there is a specific mention in Quran that no people are favorites of God, because the Bani Israel, the Israelites, they sometimes claim that we are the dear ones of God. We are the favorites of God. So no nation, no people are favorites of God. God has been kind, benevolent, Rahman to all the people, and the prophethood is an expression of the attribute of Sifat-e-Rahmaniyat of God Almighty. He sends prophets everywhere for the guidance of the people. He has been doing so.